John Gilroy here. Today, a new angle on artificial intelligence, its impact on software development. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator today. In the virtual studio, we have Terry Miller, president of Karsun Solutions. That's Karsun. Terry, how are you today?
Great. Good to be back with you, John.
Well, everyone's got the flashy stuff, the images made by artificial intelligence, and then all the words they can do these reports in artificial intelligence, and let's get to the nitty gritty here. I mean, that's all fine, and that's like Saturday afternoon fun, but in the real world, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you got to be productive with it. And I thought we'd bring Terry in and say, okay, where does the rubber meet the road? Can artificial intelligence help me create code, make code faster for my federal clients or for the federal government itself? And I think this is like a lot of stuff is going to Disneyland and having fun, but this is like, putting a water pump in your car. It's okay. I've got to get down to business. Putting a water pump in your car. I never thought I'd say that when talking about software. So first, give our audience maybe a quick thumbnail on what Karsun's done over these many years. You've been around for a long time, and focus in on, I think this product we talked about. So I think it's called Redux AI.
Sure. Thanks, John. So yeah, Karsun Solutions is now going to be celebrating our 15th year. So this is our 15th year anniversary of being around. The company has been focused since the very beginning on IT modernization, really doing a lot of large-scale modernization projects across the federal government, primarily in the civilian space. And now, of course, one of the biggest pieces of modernization is going on right now is being able to use AI, and we're using it in large part related to the software development process that we're doing right now. And that's all aspects of it, right? I'd say from right to left of what we're doing, from aspects of requirements, design, development, testing, deployment across software development. And the tool that you were just talking about, and the offering that we're using right now with our clients is called Redux. It's Karsun's Redux. And it's a toolkit that has playbooks, mechanisms, frameworks that are designed to expedite the modernization, primarily of mainframe applications. And we have two aspects of it. We have what we call Karsun Blueprint, which is it provides deep insights into systems and maps them to new services. And then we also have Karsun's App Pilot, which is a generative AI tool that utilizes Blueprint to generate code and facilitate incremental migration. And that also really helps us from our customers to enhance security and privacy. It gives specific project usability, helps us to overcome hallucinations and large language models, and also gives us proven templates to save developers time and effort.
Okay, I'm going to give you a hallucination right now. I'm going to take you back 30 years, back when you were in grade school. And what would happen is you'd have a team of people that would get out little pieces of paper and walk around and interview Terry and Ralph and Rohan and Marianne, and they'd write down these things called requirements, handwrite them probably, and then they go back to their office. They get a cup, and then they type them up, and then they have meetings, and then they have more meetings, and they have more meetings, and then somewhere in the interim future, they would come up with, yes, we want this product to sell shoes. And then maybe a year later, it'd be done. And then everyone complain. It's just, this is crazy. So can artificial intelligence maybe help in this requirements gathering process?
It can. I mean, I think one of the biggest things when you really kind of think about software development, it's not just all sitting down and writing code, right? I mean, there's such a huge aspect to it, and you were just hitting it, when it comes to the requirements gathering piece of this. So what we're finding, especially right now with a number of our federal clients, is that's one of the major areas that we're really focusing on. Working with the business users, and it's changing a little bit more where we're using AI to help in writing those requirements. So that it's now changing from the standpoint of being able to have to sit down with those users and extract all that information and go through it, where we can now move to a bit more of validation, right? So more validation of stories versus your traditional method of extracting requirements from them. And that's really been a huge benefit to our customers because now, again, we're able to go through that confirmation, and we're also able to reduce the volatility related to it as well. And it also, the other thing I'd say is it helps us with critical security and 508 compliance issues to be able to use AI up front.
I know your name is Terry Miller. There's a guy named Donald Miller who wrote a whole book about developing stories. I'm sure you're familiar with storyboard. And this seems to be a nice, efficient way to describe a specific software situation. And maybe that's one aspect of artificial intelligence can be used. In other words, you gather all these requirements, and if you sit down in front of a group of developers, they're going to get glazed over. However, if you have maybe a 3 or 4 sentence story. Terry goes to the shoe site and orders a pair of tennis shoes. They get delivered. I mean, these processes can be boiled down. I think then it's not a matter of being a brilliant software developer, but it's someone who can communicate an idea that a brilliant software developer can actually implement, then, isn't it?
It is, and so it is a very helpful way to be able to kind of help and get that information up front. But the other thing I'd say too is that it's not in place of, right? You still have to be able to have that human interaction, still have the validation. Yeah, it's really, I heard a great analogy the other day where someone was talking about kind of using AI in this way, where they said, it's basically in some way, think about like Iron Man and Jarvis, right? Jarvis is kind of like the AI, right, piece of this. And I thought that was a great analogy into how you're really kind of doing this. You're using it as a tool to help you to be able to validate these things.
I was listening to an interview with a woman from Salesforce. Her name's Karen Hay. She's from Canada. She's pretty smart. And she talked about artificial intelligence. And she said, it can unlock the knowledge trapped in data. I want to get a T-shirt like that. I mean, it's a great, and that's what you're doing. What happens is every federal agency has got tons and tons of data in there, and you can spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out. But the idea is to filter it and gather information that you can maybe make in a transition, or maybe in our AI talk is put together a library. And that's the difficulty, I think, with the federal government, because, with the Terry shoes that we talked about earlier, is that who cares what you have there? But the federal government, they're very careful about what data they release, personal information, some sensitive information. So putting together and having data access for these libraries, not as easy as it sounds, is it?
It's not. It's not. I think what we found is that the data has really helped to drive a lot of what's going on within AI in the federal government right now. But yeah, as you mentioned, the libraries and the pieces related to this. I mean, AI software, they've got models are generated from data, right? As you know, and the models are generated using algorithms implemented from those different libraries. And you have some of your major pieces out there right now that are popular libraries like TensorFlow, PyTorch, different things like that are being used. But the government has to be very careful about what kind of data is used related to it. And what we found is that a lot of our clients are making it very hyper localized, right? So we have to be very careful about what data is coming in and what data is going out related to the government agencies. And one of the things that recently I read, there was a GAO report that the Department of Homeland Security did, and they released it back in February of this year. And one of the things that they really talked about was 11 pieces of their framework. And the place where they were really having the biggest issues was around data. And there were really 2 areas where they said that they were not implemented at this point related to documenting sources and the origins of data. When it came to governance, when it came to performance, when it came to monitoring, all of those areas were fairly strong, but data is the area that we really need to concentrate on, and that's where a lot of the biggest challenges exist today.
Yeah, it is. And I think this is just you and I in a coffee shop somewhere rambling on and talking about the nationals and data and everything else. I mean, if you take a look what's coming out of the executive office, there's a fact sheet that came out on October 30th of 2023, and it talked about specifically this. It said, this is the executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence. And so this is what would Ron Burgundy say? It's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal, isn't it, Terry?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it really, I mean, we've taken a very close look. I mean, that executive order, there are a number of executive orders kind of going back to 2013. I think where it kind of started, in Executive Order 13642, making open and machine readable and the new default for government information. Then there was promoting the use of trustworthy AI. That took place back in 2020, and then of course the one you were just referencing that took place in October of 23. And again, data is such a huge aspect of that. I think one of the big things they talked about on that one was requiring the developers to be able to share information related to the tests and things that they did related to data and AI. So major focus of that executive order.
Yeah, and I think it's being implemented in the product we talked about earlier. I mean, give us a, there's always a, squeaky wheel gets the oil and the squeaky software problem gets the developers. So why'd you come up with this anyway? What was the problem you're trying to solve with Redux AI?
I think a number of different things related to it. I mean, obviously, as we mentioned up front, one of the things is really kind of understanding, what your project is in front of you. And as I mentioned, the big piece that we have in front of it is this blueprint. So it gives us a lot of insights into the systems. And we wanted to be able to have a product that was able to really kind of map these older systems. And we're talking about, in this case, kind of migrating off of mainframes, COBOL applications, and being able to map it into what are those new services really going to look like. So first of all, it's kind of mapping it out, right? And that's where AI was very useful for us from that perspective. And then the next step is kind of getting into that app pilot that we talked about, being able to use the tool to generate code, facilitate incremental migration. So the problems that I think we're talking about, number one, understanding your situation, understanding exactly what the end state is that you're trying to get to, but then to really trying to expedite it and do it in a faster way, but not just a faster way, but to do it with less volatility, a lot more quality, being able to have, be more predictive in the types of results that we're going to get for our clients. So it's really just kind of making it a much more efficient, quality-oriented process to be able to get our clients to the right end state.
If you look at this from 30,000 feet, I mean, for decades, they've used the phrase lift and shift, and we'll pull it up here and put it right there. In other words, if Terry moves to Chicago, well, moving company, they can lift and shift the stuff right there. No problem at all. And they've attempted to do this with software and had nothing but volatility is the word
Yes.
to use.
Yeah.
It sure is a check, and it sure is easy. I like that easy button from Staples. It sure is easy, but it's not going to work. And so I think what happens in these transitions, because they're so complex, one has to have a serious approach to start with the data. But this whole idea of transitioning is like, well, there may be information you don't need, but there may be information that has to be guarded, and there's information that can make the transition. So I think this is it's much more delicate than calling up Belkin's moving and moving to Chicago, huh?
It is. And I think the other piece, I mean, again, the word data keeps on coming up, right? And what we found in this work that we're doing, it's very much hyper localized in how we're working it. So there's an additional layer of personalization. We've done this to make it very repeatable. But again, from the perspective of being able to kind of get them to that end state, it's not as simple as lift and shift. Lift and shift. I mean, we've seen where that's been tried. It doesn't work well. And really being able to kind of understand how everything interacts, understanding kind of that whole kind of infrastructure around it, I think is a major part of this, and that's what we've really tried to tackle with our Redux toolkit.
Yeah, I just focused on the word ecosystem there. Oh, ecosystem. Taking notes here as you're speaking. Wrote down ecosystem. So if people want to learn more, they can go to Karsun, KARSUN.LLC.com. And should they type in the blog and find out more about this product, or where can they learn from your website?
Yes, our Karsun blog has a lot of information related to it. We have some white papers that are up there today that really kind of focus on this. So that would be the perfect place. I give a plug to our Karsun Innovation Center and our lead over there, Badri Raman, who we kind of call within the company our chief disruptor. Our team over there really has goes out and they tackle these big problems, and they put a lot of great information out there on our blog related to how Karsun is addressing these issues in the federal government.
And if you're listening to this and you're walking your dog, you can go to federaltechpodcast.com, look up Terry Miller, and I have all these links right in the show notes page, and you can listen to it again or grab the transcript, whatever you want to do. I want to dive more into your innovation center. I think the last time we spoke, when I think of innovation center, I think of big companies like Booz Allen or Oracle. I mean, imagine Oracle and all those huge buildings and Karsun, KRSUN. It's like, well, you kind of just regular guys here, aren't you? Like regular neighbor or something, but you put money into an innovation center, which is a differentiator.
It is, and as I mentioned, we're now in our 15th year. But the two founders of the company, Sundar and Kartik, that's where you get the name Karsun, coming from Kartik and Sundar. When they founded the company, the Karsun Innovation Center was part of it on day one. And we wanted to really be different. We didn't want to be another company out there, doing federal government work. We wanted to be able to bring real solutions to our clients. We wanted to be on the cutting edge of things. We also wanted to be able to use the Innovation Center to really take a look at what are the best practices, not only in government, but on commercial. and be able to bring the best of that to our clients. So we've got an innovation center of a group of people who are, not necessarily out there, day to day, doing work with our government clients, but they're out there trying to solve, these big kind of hairy problems out there, and work to bring some solutions together and be able to put us on that cutting edge. I mean, one of the things you always think about going out and meeting with these government agencies, what we don't like to do, right, as a company is to go out and say, hey, here's our slide deck and let us tell you about the company. We like to show things. We kind of call it show, don't tell. We like to walk in and say, here's what we're doing. We're going to show you how we can help you. And our Karsun Innovation Center has really enabled us to do just that.
I did an interview a couple weeks back with a guy named Sumner Lee with Fuse, F-U-S-E integration, and he's a helicopter pilot, came and started this company, saw the problem of integration. And so let's say old Sumner Lee sitting out there in San Diego, he has a system he wants to make a transition from or to. And so what he can do is he can contact you and maybe test drive this artificial intelligence for making this transition, get down with you, maybe and kick it and kick the tires. Is that what they do? Kick the helicopter blade. And so the people who are listening to this podcast can go, well, maybe I can test drive this or figure it out, or maybe it's the wrong tool. I don't know. And I think it's the message I want our people to listen is that, these guys have been around. They got a great, if you go to their website, they got all awards all over the place. I thought it was an awards website. So, oh yeah, best place to work, best place to work. Terry's a bad boss. Good place to work. Good place to work. And so I think if you approach this from a relaxed, friendly atmosphere, is okay. We have this. We've got an older system. We got to make a transition, and we're getting some quotes in that. That's lots and lots of hours. I mean, I'm looking at that's hours and hours and hours of people who may not even understand what's going on with older systems, but they can maybe test drive and do some use cases or some application there. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's the type of work we love to do, and it really kind of gets our guys excited, within the company. Especially like I said, within that Karsun Innovation Center, you bring us some of those issues, and our team just loves to be able to tackle them and be able to see what we can really do. Kind of again, I go back to that whole thing of show, don't tell. We like to be able to show what we can accomplish for them.
Well, looking into the future of artificial intelligence, I went to your LinkedIn profile. You got all kinds of wide background that you've seen good things and bad things, and some people say, geez, that artificial intelligence, it's right the answer for everything. Other people say, I'm going to the mountains, get me a gun. So where do you stand in the answer to everything and get a gun continuum here?
That's a good question. I mean, kind of where we see the future of it. I mean, it's hard to tell, right? I think we are still kind of at the beginning of a lot of what's being used within government. We're seeing a lot of pilots, that are currently going on today. But I mean, we talked earlier on about some things related to code generation. We're certainly seeing a lot of use for AI and chatbots. A lot more right now, I think, from image generation that's being used. I'll give you an example. One of the places that we're working today, we're doing modernization for fleet management in the government. And one of the big things we're really seeing the future of that is around telematics. And we're seeing that these systems of intelligence are using ML models, and to really be able to now, from the standpoint of be able to make some good predictions, right? So you've got an agency that's managing a whole fleet of vehicles, and think of now being able to predict and using AI to say, okay, we've got an issue. We think that this part of the vehicle is going to fail, or here's something that you should be looking at related to maintenance, or there's issues related to recalling vehicles. Making those kind of predictions early on, it helps from a safety standpoint. It does so much related to being able to maintain those things and save the taxpayers money as you're able to do it. But a lot of great things I think that we see kind of coming in the future. It's just hard to tell where that's going to be. I think from the standpoint of what we're seeing, that a lot more related to not just kind of the code and pieces like that, but a lot of things related to how you're starting to use imaging and those types of things in the future.
Earlier, I mentioned a book by Donald Miller, probably relative to your storyboard. And I want to bring up another book here. I'm reading a book now called How to Think. My wife probably recommended it. How to Think. And the author is Alan Jacobs. And he talks about, a lot of philosophy and how people approach problems. And I think from maybe a historical perspective is that maybe this is another tool. Okay. I've done a lot of mechanical work, and you reach in for a 9/16 socket, and all of a sudden you don't, and you reach a half inch, it works. And so maybe this is just another tool to accomplish some important topics. And I guess on both extremes, I can see crazy, but I think in the middle is that, well, I'm not going to use my socket tool set for making dinner tonight. No.
Right.
And I'm not going to take it to the beach, but I am going to use it when I put the water pump in my car. And so I think that if you have maybe a detached opinion, and you put this in a more, I haven't say this, but a liberal arts perspective of how to think, how to think critically. And I think it's a detached view, but I think that's why we talk about ecosystems and thinking. I think it requires a wide divergence of skill sets. And I hope the people in the Innovation Center have maybe ecology majors and maybe philosophy majors or math majors for sure. But there's some concepts here that are really, you have to almost like step back and go, okay, what's the right approach on this? And how are we using? I'm sure you folks have, because I've read about your stuff on your website. So you are following the president's directive of being ethical, but
Yes.
it's challenging because you're being inundated with data all the time and pressure to change, and we've got to get this done in 2 weeks. But it's a push and pull from many areas, isn't it, Harry?
It is. I mean, again, if you kind of think about AI today, I mean, you talked about it as a tool, and you kind of talk about kind of, where is it going? And there are really kind of four types of AI that are talked about. There's reactive machines, there's limited memory AI, which are both, available today, right? And then there's also kind of, where it potentially could be going, right? Which is theory of mind, and then kind of getting to that point of self-awareness, right? Those are the two that we have not achieved, right, at this point. But at this, I would say right now, right, when you think about reactive machines or performing a basic task, upon input, limited memory AI, kind of goes back again to that piece about data, using data and being able to use that to make decisions, to analyze information, and then, really being able to improve over time, right? And you look at things that are resulting out of that, like, self-driving vehicles, virtual voice assistants, chatbots that are coming out of it. But I would say that right now, yes, it probably is more of a tool. But where it's going, is kind of the big question. Do we ever really kind of get to that point of looking at, theory of mind, or even that point of self-awareness, related to AI? But those are all things, again, a lot smarter people than me, sitting in our Karsun Innovation Center, who are certainly, sitting there every day thinking about this and how we, apply it in a good, ethical, type of way, and have the right governance around it.
I like to hear when the president of the company says, "Smarter people are down the hall." Take your problems
Yes,
down there.
much smarter than me.
You're knocking on the wrong door. That's pretty good. Well, unfortunately, Terry, we're going to have to end this conversation. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Terry Miller, president of Karsun Solutions, Karsun.